This is SLP episode 337, and strap in because it's a long one. It's not just the players who do it tough over Easter, you know. We've loads of your fan reviews covering all the rivalries, some bigger than others, all the talking points, some meatier than others, and all the stupid players still being stupid. Some delayed reactions bookend it all, and NRL review is back, and giddy from too much chocolate it seems. So we've got you covered on the busy last week in rugby league. Hello listeners, welcome along to episode 337 of the Super League pod. This is our Easter edition, and seeing as Easter is traditionally the time of derbies, we haven't got me and David because I couldn't tolerate that. Luckily he's off watching soccer. We've got Sarah, so we're not going to have the what's the biggest derby debate because they're both the biggest derby, I guess, in different ways. But we are going to talk about our sides losing, Sarah.
Yay! Can't beat it, eh?
At least Easter. I know all the players are moaning again, which is fair enough, to be honest, because we did get rid of Easter games and then brought them back this year for the World Cup. But really, it was a blessing for us, weren't it? Because it meant we got to celebrate a win as well as suffer a defeat.
Yeah, I must admit there was one point yesterday, and I was like, I wonder if I could get ill before the pod, because I don't think I can face talking about.
Around about 76 minutes into the game yesterday.
Well, at various points, to be honest, I was like, I think I'm just going to be so miserable and depressing talking about absolutely everything to do with rugby. But well, I mean, I still might be. I don't know.
It shouldn't be fully the case, but let's see where we get to. Do you want to give a shout out first to Rob's Megastore?
Yeah, so we're sponsored again by Rob's Megastore, and it stocks a wide range of toys, stationery, arts and crafts ideas, pet accessories, books, and of course rugby league birthday cards. You can search for Rob's Megastore on eBay or find the link in our episode blog post on superleaguepod.com. SLP listeners can use the code SLP10, that's SLP10 at checkout to get 10% off any orders over £5. Or you can enter SLP discount and give your 10% towards funding our running costs instead.
Good stuff. Okay, so we've got a few little bits of feedback from you, the listeners, for last week's show. Then, obviously, we've got tons of games to go through. Fan views on all 12 Super League games from over the weekend. So that's good. But it does mean that there's plenty to go through. Obviously, there'll be a couple of games in each round that have had a bit more of focus than the others. And I think it's going to be the Hull and Wigan games, for the Hull and Wigan games from the Friday fixtures, unfortunately. And then we'll cover everything else that's happened as well in the last week, with 2 rounds of bans to talk about, 2 rounds of injuries to talk about, and we'll, and then we'll make our guesses for next week in Super League as well. So tons to get through. But last week, Sarah, Alan raised quite a stir.
Well, I noticed even just in our hosts chat group, it was quite a stir.
Yeah. David wasn't too chuffed with what Alan had to say about his view of the misery that he feels watching St Helens these days. But David's son also got in touch. At JWPowell9 is James's Twitter handle. Sporting a wonderful bushy ginger beard on Good Friday was James. He said, "I have never heard a more bitter review of a Saints match in the history of the pod. Phenomenal work." But that's balanced out by Brendan. Brendan's a Hull fan, isn't he? At BP Loftus. And Brendan said, "Totally agree with the comments on the pod regarding Saints. Mainstream media darlings, keep up the great work." So there you go. You can please half the people half the time, it seems.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want me to move on to other feedback we got about the NRL memberships?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so David Hunter, who I think is a Parramatta Eels fan, isn't he?
Yes.
He said, "I get a yearly ticket. I think you can pay for it by the month, but not a monthly subscription to be honest, I would worry about the fact you're paying for nothing for several months. Would people keep cancelling, then reapplying? If it was not charged in the off season, then I can see the merit. There are smaller game packages in the NRL.
So the memberships are broadly similar to a season ticket or a season pass here, then, it sounds like, in the NRL, so they don't do too much too differently. So no new ideas from there we can rob?
Yeah, no, seems like it. And David also got in touch to do with relegation in Super League, and he said that he did a hypothetical RL episode where relegation of the recently promoted team was not possible. So how it worked was that relegation is based on a cumulative ranking over 2 years, or it could be 3, he says. So even if they finished 12th, the previous 12th ranked team would have more than 12 points. This would continue on a rolling basis, meaning teams could have one bad year but not 2. It still gets 1 up, 1 down, but stops the years.
Yeah, I listened to this episode of his hypothetical RL podcast, actually. Sometimes he comes up with his scenarios, and they're hard to follow, aren't they? But basically, it would be, you would get scored on your positions at the end of the season, and it would be a cumulative rolling 2-year thing. So say you finish 11th one season and 1st the next season, you'd get 12. But if you finished 12th in one season, you'd also get 12. But then if you finished like 9th twice, you would have 18, for example. And then that's how a team would be picked to go down.
Right, yeah.
I'm supportive of any kind of protection for promoted teams, but at the same token, if we're going to have promotion and relegation, the best way to have it is the most simplistic way. And I think what we really need to think about is, do we really want to have it? Is there actually any benefits to our sport of it? And that's where the promotion and relegation conversation needs to start and end for me.
Yeah. I think, also doing away with, doing it over 2 years would mean that, let's face it, we won't be rubbing our hands in glee at the thought of Leeds being relegated this year.
Yeah, so it would take away that positive, wouldn't it? Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think there's a straightforward way of doing it. I think culturally, I've said millions of times, culturally, our sporting culture is dominated by soccer, which has promotion and relegation. So every other sport seems to think that that's the best method for them as well, and then it seeps through, and so it's here to stay probably. But we need to find a way of making it sustainable for whichever full-time teams exist outside Super League to not be boom and bust.
Yeah, I think that is, whether we look at giving the promoted team, exemption of a couple of years or something.
Or do we make the championship season end sooner so that they have more lead-in time to the next season?
Yeah.
Because
So
that's one of the issues I always think, that they've only got the same amount to prepare for something that they didn't know was going to happen as all the other teams, most of which knew what division they were going to be in the next year.
Yeah, so that they've got a bit longer maybe to think about, approaching other players and things.
Yeah. No, yeah, exactly, yeah. But there's no perfect way.
No, there isn't.
But if someone out there has got a perfect way of dealing with promotion and relegation, you can get in touch with us and get involved. Or even if you want to talk about the misery that is watching St Helens win all the games that they play this year, you can get in touch. It's at Super League Pod on Twitter and Instagram, or facebook.com/Super League Pod. You can email superleaguepod@gmail.com or visit superleaguepod.com to get the info on each episode and links to the Google Forms for your fan views that we can share and discuss on the show. And don't forget to subscribe in whatever podcast app you're listening to us on, and leave a rating and review if you can. That would be great. Now, Sarah, it's time to take a big deep breath and then hit 2 rounds of Super League match reviews. We'll start with round 8, Rivals round. We started with a basically a new rivalry in real terms, because I don't think the clubs have ever played at this sort of level before. Anyway, it's Catalans and Toulouse on Thursday night. Played out in front of 8,922. Robert Hicks was the referee. It was Catalans 18, Toulouse 10 in the end. It was 14-6 to the Dragons at half-time, so they managed to maintain that eight-point margin. In terms of the stats, would it shock anyone out there listening who watched the game if I said that the game had the most penalties in a game so far this year? The sides were split the count of 18-9 each. Catalans made more ground at a better average gain, 224 more metres at 1.4 metres per carry, better average gain, in fact, quite big numbers there. Although Toulouse made an extra break than their hosts, they also made more errors too. What about individually, Sarah?
Yeah, so individually for Catalans, Ben Julien made 43 tackles, of which 11 were marker tackles. Artur Romano made 141 metres. Food Yaha scored 2 tries, made 120 metres and 2 clean breaks. Mike McMeekin with 1 try assist, 5 tackle busts, 108 metres and 3 offloads. For the losing Toulouse side, Hugo Pezet made 44 tackles. Romain Navarrete with 40 tackles, 10 of these were marker tackles. Matty Russell scored 1 try, made 8 tackle busts and 113 metres, and Mitch Garbutt with 105 metres.
Yeah, Mike McMeekin with good numbers. Unfortunately for him, he picked up, I think in the end he said it was a dislocated wrist or a broken wrist or something, so he's going to be out for 4 weeks or more with that, unfortunately. In the first of the fan views, Alan Walker said, a rematch of the pre-season, scrappy game with players' minds elsewhere. If we can give them 4 points, they might stay up. No great rivalry here, and certainly never a derby. Hull is nearer to Staines than these two. Bar Napa, our middles worked well. Halves tossed it off. Redcliffe take Pearce now. And Morg only had 30 mins when we had 12. Bad night for Bosco with the Camp Nou score coming through. Costly game for both teams. I think Barcelona lost a football match, is what that part means.
Brian Davis said, really enjoyed the first French Super League derby. 2 points that we dropped should have beaten an off-form Catalans. Too many basic errors from Toronto there. Got over the line 3 times and failed to score. Twice had a scrum on their 10 and knocked on first tackle. Unfortunately, another game of close but no cigar. Running out of time now, but still hope of staying up if we can get some wins soon. Still fun and nice to be on telly too.
Yeah, Jenna had a little chat with Bri before the game in the sort of fan village outside the stadium there in Perpignan, so we got to see his luscious flowing locks.
Yeah.
Tom Andrews said, built up to be good for Super League, etc., but one of the worst games I've ever seen. Such poor quality served up from both sides. Catalan's there for the taking, but when your best player is Gigo, you don't have a chance. Good for the sport, but not a derby and not a good game. What did you make of this one then? I kind of agree with Tom to an extent. It was a hard watch.
Yeah, I mean, I saw this on highlights, so obviously didn't get to see the full spectacle in whatever sense that was. But I think from what I saw, yeah, there were a lot of errors by Toulouse. You know, they obviously made good ground, either whether that was by penalties or by meters on the ground, but they didn't seem to capitalise on those that possession and the position, and you just can't afford to do that, can you?
No, I mean, I kept hoping watching the game that something good would break out, because it was close at least, so there was a bit of tension there with that. But the teams conspired against that, really. Too many errors and penalties all around. And Robert Hicks was quite officious in his officiating. He didn't let anyone get away with anything. So that meant that, and that's not criticism necessarily, that's just saying how it felt. So, everything that did happen was picked up. So the teams were just poor, I thought, and Catalans could have been beaten, but equally, you never truly felt like Toulouse were gonna have the composure to break Catalans down enough times to win the game. There was plenty of incidents in the game. Lucas Albert, he's got